My section is America's Dilemma. It's about the U.S. involvement in the French Indochina War and why we are helping. American leaders soon understood that the French Indochina War was an entanglement with no triumph in sight. The Americans urged the French to seek after a more forceful military system to spread the Vietnamese National Army meager. Americans saw the main route for the French to predominate was to rally the Vietnamese behind Bao Dai's administration. However, instead of bowing to American requests, French political and military leaders approached the United States for ever larger amounts of military and investment support. The Americans were paying for more than 40% of the war by 1953. The French then additionally asked for American cooperation in a local aggregate security arrangement and guaranteed to submit U.S. ground battle troops should the Chinese armed forces intercede in the war. On one level, the French kept asking for more excellent American help, and on the alternate, they severely disliked the expanding American vicinity in Vietnam and impeded the deliberations of American authorities to watch the war. The French accepted the Americans were gullible about the messy war strategy in Vietnam, and additionally, they saw it as foolish that the Americans were spreading absurd plans regarding freedom and independence around the local Vietnamese. American authorities declined to sign the aggregate security arrangement or guarantee to commit troops should the Chinese invade. However, they did all they could to avoid a French withdrawal, as holding the line in Vietnam was vital to the victory of the Cold War in Asia. Harry Truman, the president around that time, desperately needed to keep the French and their Vietnamese associates battling, yet they understood that the political and military aspects of the war were going very, very poorly. By late 1952, the French had endured 90,000 losses and had been pushed into the enclaves encompassing the significant urban areas of Vietnam. Bao Dai's government was degenerate and ineffectual, while Ho Chi Minh's hang on the Vietnamese people had developed greatly as the Viet Minh presented reforms in its areas of control. What had begun as the Vietnamese opposing French authority in late 1946 turned into a broad, worldwide clash and unfortunately ended in defeat.
Hello, period one. I am Fernando. I'm doing my segment on America's Dilemma. I will be drawing my battle in a draw my life format to help explain. This video will focus around the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. The belligerents of the battle were the French Union, who were supported by the United States, and the Viet Minh. Anyways, both suffered major casualties, but the Vietnamese did have more deaths. Let's see. You may be wondering what caused the battle. Well, French units were occupying Vietnam. The French units were set up in a lot of remote areas on search and destroy missions. However, they soon expected an attack and thought Dien Bien Phu would be a perfect place to engage the Vietnamese. Some troops parachuted to Dien Bien Phu, and they created a fort to make sure that they were able to get a lot of drop-off supplies. They also were getting a lot of the supplies from the United States, who were also giving a lot of drop-off supplies, so it was very important that, they had airfield. Shockingly, despite the huge supplies from the drop-off boxes and the aid from the United States, the French ended up losing because they were outgeneraled by the Vietnamese, who were willing to sacrifice more men and more lives. This loss made Eisenhower ask himself how far he would go to save the French position in Indonesia. Today, most Americans use this battle to show the excellent generals that the Vietnamese had. They also use it to show the dedication and willingness that the communists had, and their hatred for surrendering. After the battle, there was a Geneva conference in Ngo Diem. He refused to allow elections, and that would eventually lead to the Vietnam War. The state of Vietnam was also temporarily divided into two zones, the north being the Communist Democratic Republic of Vietnam, and the south being the French-supported Vietnam. If you're wondering why the French conference was set up in Geneva, that's because Geneva is always known to have been somewhat peaceful place. It would have been extremely convenient if, for the United States, had the French won.
My section is Eisenhower Takes Charge. Eisenhower was the 34th President of the United States from 1953 until 1961. He was a 5-star general in the United States Army during World War II and served as the Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe. Eisenhower was unhappy with the course of the war because of the French war effort. The French war effort was weakened by faulty military strategy, uninspired leadership, and the refusal of the French government to admit that the era of the European colonialism had ended. He also helped found the EDC. The EDC is the European Defense Community, and he helped it by using the US back plan. The French were experiencing a desperate military situation in 1953 spring. In the northern part of Indochina, French forces were largely confined to the densely populated Red River Delta, while in the central and southern Indochina they were entrenched in the cities, with the Viet Minh dominating the rural areas.